that what he needs in the back as well? All right. 637. All right. Les Inbody is going to go ahead and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. John, would you lead us in the opening prayer?
Let us pray. Father, we just thank you for this wonderful day, Father. And as the weather changed, Father, we know we got to have seasons. But Father, as we go into this Thanksgiving week, Father, just for a couple of days from now, it'll be Thanksgiving, Father. We just pray that during this time, Father, we began to look at one another and be thankful that we have one another, Father, and we can work together, Father, to make a difference, Father. Bless this time that we come together to look at the budget, Father, and look at the different things that we need to consider to maybe improve it, Father. Be with us during this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Sean. Can we have confirmation of quorum?
We do have a quorum.
We're still learning the button thing. All right, that takes us to approval of the meeting minutes. They were sent out earlier today. Are there any changes or a motion to approve? Mary?
I have one more.
Jeremiah, I have a question. In the minutes, it says on the back that you calculated the new county taxpayer share of tuition-free students. And the first number is correct, but the second number, $347,900, I get $142,668.
Is that a typo?
It's a typo. I'll strike it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other changes? All right, without hearing any, can I have a motion to approve the meetings with the change?
Seconded.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? Okay. All right, that approves the meeting minutes. There are a couple notes here I wanted to add I did not include in the meeting minutes just due to an oversight on my part, and one of them is due to me being aware of it after making the agenda. Lisa Phelps has resigned from the Cbrc due to her election to the school board. So congratulations to her. She will be missed, but she's got better things to do with her time than Cbrc. Les Inbody will be filling in for her positions as he is her alternate, or that position's alternate. The other note for Cbrc is the meeting dates for January and February, which Mary was kind enough to send me an email with the dates in there. They end up as Martin Luther King and President's Day. So we may want to look at your calendars out that far and see if we want to shift them from the holidays. And let's see, we can work that offline because we have plenty of time and we can confirm all that stuff that way. I don't want to take up too much time with us trying to figure out what our calendars look like 3 months in advance. I just want to make sure everyone was aware that that was a upcoming item. All right, that takes us to the first bullet I have on the agenda called school discussion. This is just trying to wrap up the school budget. I did send out the CBRC questions from the last session. I have not heard, and this was to both the county and the school, and I have not heard back from the school. It was sent to there, but I have not heard back from them. I have heard back from the county, and they did send out the summary of the benefits. Now, hey, Mary, on the benefits that you sent, did that include both county and school? I just want to get clarification to make sure I'm speaking properly.
Yes, everything should be in there. There were 2 emails. The first one had all the information I had available at that time, which was everything about retiree benefits for both county and school. There was later there was a large document with all the county benefits, and then there was a second later email with all the school benefits. But I believe both county and school active and retiree benefits have been provided now through 2 sets of emails. So.
All right, thank you. I wanted to get clarification on that. Yes.
Actually, Mary, we had, Jeremiah had asked for the programs that have been superseded but are still running. Particularly, I think, on the school side, because they're still, refunding money for prescriptions. And also there was a question that was asked about the Medicare supplement that they pay $38 a month for, about what is the employer share of that and how many people are in that.
There was a list provided that looked at employee and employer share separate. There were several different documents, and there were lots of information. Catherine, I'm not familiar with the programs that the school has on their side, but if you have a specific question about something that you know is not there, if you could just put that in writing, I will contact Michelle and try to get that information for you.
Okay.
Because there was a lot, she put together a lot of information in response to that question. We tried to cover everything that we knew of that existed. So if there's something that got overlooked, I know in the one that we sent to you, for instance, I didn't have the holidays in there. When I was reviewing the schools, they did. So I sent a separate holiday listing. There is no such document in existence right now that covers everything that you asked for in that email. That took some time to put pieces of documents together. Something could have obviously been overlooked. So if there's something specific that you know of, please let us know, and I will get it to the right person, whether it's county or school, to get that answer for you.
Could I ask you also a question about schools? A couple of meetings ago in the Board of Supervisors meeting, the director of HR and I think our liaison with the health insurance were discussing implementing one of the evergreen suggestions, which was to go to a Medicare supplement and Part D coverage as opposed to continuing the Anthem full coverage. Do you know if anything happened with that?
Is this specific to county or
County.
school?
This is county.
Nothing has happened today.
Will it
Rose
come
is
back?
here.
Will it come back up for discussion?
There are plans to actually bring back some recommendations to the board in January. At this point, there's been no action that's been taken. And even the recommendations that come forward to the board in January, there won't be any action that's taken until the new plan year, which would begin October 1 of
Sure,
2018.
because I think that's a great recommendation.
We think so, too.
Yes, it
So
is.
it's good to know that we have your support.
Yes, it's a great recommendation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And one of the other things was planned IT purchases. Mary had mentioned that it was going to be at least the end of the month before they get to it, and I'm sure the schools are in a similar situation. I guess there's a whole bunch of budget thing going on. I don't know. Unless there's no other comments, I'm just going to keep moving along here. I had sent out the stuff. I had worked with Kirk Twig, and there was a whole bunch of back and forth as to a date, and I actually got around to, we settled out, and I took a tour of the school maintenance department out behind Snow Library. I don't remember what it's called. I also sent out the receiver's responses, and I think I also sent out my notes on it a little before then. It was a good tour, very informative. I had a better understanding of how that function works, and I'm planning on setting up also something through the county so I can do the same thing just to see how that goes. Help me understand how they do the maintenance. As an engineer, a lot of people worry about how much does this thing cost up front, but as an engineer, I'm used to dealing with the maintenance costs or understanding that, and that's usually ends up being the more expensive end of the tail. So you have a big purchase up front, you buy your car, it's 20, 30, 40,000, but if it costs $1,000 a year to maintain, that adds to the cost of the car. So it's kind of the real rough view of, I'm just looking to make sure, see if there's anything we can do to save cost-wise on that end of the spectrum. One thing I did notice during the tour, and I'm going to suggest maybe we recommend looking at this for both county and schools, is that there is an awful lot of paper inventory being done there. So it's all by hand, it's all by paper. Those tend to be somewhat time consuming. So, and I think I counted 4 or 5 different inventory systems in the same building. So it's, some of it makes sense based off department, but some of it was within the same department, just different areas. So, any questions? I'm sure everyone got my emails. I didn't hear anyone saying they didn't. Let's see. I think that takes us to the county budget discussion. I took a look at the county budget, and everyone else is supposed to take a look at it and see places they wanted to look at, recommendations. I did have a couple questions I wanted to ask Mary. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to put you on the spot again. I noticed that there's a difference between expenditures and appropriated expenditures, and I wasn't entirely sure what that difference meant.
I'm not sure which exact
Well,
report you're
there's-
looking at in there, and I don't have my document with me. But there are, I know, for instance, there are cases where there's an expenditure reported for tax relief. That is not an appropriated expenditure. That is the amount of relief that the board gives to the citizens who qualify for the tax relief program. But from an accounting standpoint, it has to be shown as an expense against that revenue that we would have collected had we been collecting that revenue from those people. There are also transfers out that are part of our total number that are not appropriated. When we transfer money from one fund to the other, that is not required appropriation. Otherwise, you'd be duplicating because you appropriate what you're actually going to expend. So if we're transferring $120 million to the schools, we don't want to appropriate it in the general fund and appropriate it on the school side.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest part of the difference, Jeremiah, but if you have
Yeah.
a specific.
I just noticed it was kind of a general trend where one would be like, let's say 10 million, the next one would be like 11 million. And I was just kind of curious as to the reason.
It's typically one of those two items, some sort of special line item or the transfers. That's the biggest one that exists, and I think in every one of those reports. So.
Mm-hmm. And there was also something called a net tax support. Is that related to the relief of the funds to
Net tax support is
taxpayers?
our attempt at trying to help the taxpayer understand how much of that support for that particular program, I'm assuming you're looking now at departmental budget sections, how much of it is actually supported by the taxes and how much is supported by some other sort of revenue source. If you go to the sheriff's budget, you'll see a whole lot of revenue sources that are available for the sheriff, whether it be through grants that they receive or through sheriff's fees. They also actually have a program where they actually have companies that come in and contract with them to have deputies on site for security, and they pay us for those services. All of those revenue sources are applied to each of the departments. The animal shelter, for instance, has animal shelter fees when you adopt an animal. That's all run through the sheriff's program. We try to give you an idea of all of those revenue sources and then what's left that is actually funded from taxes. That could be any tax, real estate, personal property, meals tax, sales tax, whatever tax we have available in general. But that is the purpose of that net tax support number.
Okay. Sorry,
No.
I have the big book you guys provided for me, so I don't plan on going through it all. Don't worry.
Oh, come on. You know, it's riveting.
Sigh of relief. In here, in the budget strategy, I was looking through it, and it says growth of assessed value of real property. Let's see. Does the county track, like on a per quarter basis or per monthly basis, how the actual is related to their expected? I mean, it's probably by a half year because they do their property assessments every.
Assessed value, they look at it, we have an assessment year every 2 years, actually, and it's based on a January basis. That is a question as far as what they track on their side for the assessment office. I don't know that they do that, but they very well may have that level of tracking. But they provided those percentage increases to us through the budget. They provide it to us annually, but it is impacted through the reassessment year, which occurs every other year.
Mary, on this, are you all able to track that increase in the revenue we've received? Because I thought maybe you all had mentioned in the Board of Supervisors meeting that you had projected a carryover, and so not as far as the assess, but you expect a certain amount of revenue. Yes. From the real estate tax and the personal property tax biannually.
We have an annual projection that we do for every single revenue source. There are hundreds of revenue sources that we project every year. Each one of them has a series of analysis that is done, and in the case of the assessment, it would be both looking at growth, new construction, any information that we have available to put that assessment together. We also have to factor in things like collection rates. Not everybody pays their taxes, so we have to factor in some level of assumption that someone's not going to pay on time, and some of those that the treasurer, who does a very good job of collecting delinquent taxes, once he does, they have penalties and interest assessed on them. So all of that is factored into those projections. Each year we look at those for projection purpose. We report them, our estimates mid-year, third quarter, and again at the final report we have the details by count. Now the CAFR will not have every line item in it, but there are certainly details for each one, and we will look every year at our analysis, Catherine, and do our best to adjust anything that we can do to make it closer the next year. So many things, I'll be honest with you, are tied to the economy. Personal property is all driven by how many cars people buy. And how many new cars? Years ago, when new cars, when the economy tanked, older vehicles rose in value. Who would have thought that? But people couldn't afford new cars, so they were buying older vehicles, and so there was a value for that increased. So there are so many factors. We do our best based on trend and based on any information we have available, whether it be through generally used statistical data or through our departmental, like the assessment, to get those estimates close. And we try every year to get them closer, but it's not an easy task.
What about isn't a certain percentage of the meals tax transferred to the schools? And
there's no specific meals tax amount transferred to the schools, no.
Okay,
no.
All right.
There's a report in the front of the expenditure, the department expenditure report, that tells you how we transfer out what we call non-designated. The other part that makes the budget a little tricky is so much of what runs through our budget is designated for specific purposes. It's things that grants that come in to buy a sheriff's vehicle. Well, then we have to buy a sheriff's vehicle with that grant. All the grants that come through the social services program, millions of dollars of grants, millions and millions of dollars that have to be used for those programs. They're all part of that budget document. When you pull all those pieces apart, what's left is local tax revenue, which we have a choice or the board has a choice in how they designate that. That report, and Dawn and I were just looking at it, I don't remember the page number, but that report has in there how those undesignated revenues are laid out by department, so in order of magnitude. And the schools is the top one on that list. The largest percentage of those non-designated revenues goes to the schools, and then I think it's debt service after that, probably public safety, I'm thinking off the top of my head, but these are the things that typically are at the top of that list. And it goes right down to the very bottom where there is a minimal amount given to some departments.
Okay, thank you.
This is another one of my clarification type questions. In the new debt service, or net new debt service, it talks about the net new general fund debt service resulting from the issuance of these bonds is some value. Is that a monthly value? Is that the yearly value? Or is that
What
the
is the
total
value,
expenditure?
the statement there?
The first one, let's see, bonds authorized county voters in 2014 is 49,462. And then there's another one related to school projects, uses the exact same verbiage, but it's like 286,320. And so I'm just trying to understand, is that like a yearly cost for doing the
I
debt?
need to look at
or-
that report, Jeremiah, to answer that question.
Okay, I've got it marked. So
Yeah, I
show you
can,
afterwards.
that, it's, typically, we would be reporting the annual debt service tied to a specific item, because even, when we borrow $20 million to build something or to buy something, that cost goes into building or buying that thing, and just like your mortgage, when your cost goes into building or buying your home, after that, you end up paying the monthly mortgage payment to pay it off, and the debt service is that payment. So there's a capital account that tracks the actual capital expenditures, and then there's the debt service that pays the bill off. And so I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but when I look at it, I can tell you which one.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood what the numbers actually meant. It's page 23. I had another question, but I want to ask you when I do that, because it relates to a graph, and I just want to understand, and I don't know, you might remember off the top of your head. The general fund forecast, it has this neat little graph on page 31. I'd hold it up, but it'd be useless for you. Where the revenues at one slope and the expenditures at a different slope. And I'm just wondering, is the expenditures more kind of like you're planning for the worst case scenario with
That's
the
the
most
forecasted
conservative-
model?
Yeah.
Yes. In the back of the document, there's actual details about the forecasted models. We have one for general fund, transportation, and utilities. They actually tell you the assumptions that are made there, and they are assumptions based on what those items will grow at, based on cost of living. Debt service would be growing based on the capital improvement plan that the board had improved. So all those factors are assumptions based on what we know about the future at this point.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a few.
Go ahead.
Actually, it's for you, Chief. How often do we replace fire equipment?
You're talking about the rolling stock, so the fire engines and so forth, or?
I don't know. It just says it's like $1 million a year.
Okay, so that would be the capital expenses. So fire engines, we basically got on a replacement schedule that we try to take them off first line response after about 10 years, keep them in a reserve for about another 2 to 3 to 4 years, depending upon the status of the fleet and how things are going. So those are our engines. Our specialty apparatus, which are some more expensive purchases, so they're ladder trucks, heavy rescues, and tankers. We tend to try to keep those about at least 15 years moving forward.
So is it like school buses where we keep them for 15 years and after that they're just too expensive to maintain?
The expenses of maintaining them go up significantly. By that time, they've run several thousand calls. They essentially wear out and they become more expensive to maintain. A lot of times they don't have the up-to-date safety factors built into them at that point as well.
And what do we do with them afterwards? I know we sell our school buses to third world countries. Do we do anything with our fire trucks that way?
They are put on, is it the Gov Deals, I think is the auction site that the county uses. So just like any other surplus property that goes away from the county, it goes to that website, and they can, we've had them end up in South America.
Yeah, we
for
have
some
too.
different places.
They've been on videos and things.
Yep.
So yeah, and the other question was, what were the new vehicles for?
This year,
Yeah.
one is a replacement engine at Fire Company 5. Another one is a replacement rescue engine at Fire Company 8, which is Thornburg. Company 5 is Chancellor. And one that is the most expensive piece of apparatus is a replacement for the tower truck. So it's a tower ladder at Fire Company 1 right down the road here. That one was purchased, I want to say, in 1993. So it
Almost
is
as
well
old as my
overdue for
oldest.
being replaced. So,
And then there was a couple just regular vehicles, just,
There were, I'm trying to remember what we actually purchased this year versus what's coming up next year, since we've all been in budget mode. I think there was one or two, a couple staff vehicles to go along with some new positions that were added. So the service manager, the EMS education specialist, or whatever we're calling that these days. But it's basically staff vehicles to get people here and there for various meetings and other projects that they have ongoing.
I could get a staff vehicle.
So
Thank-
hopefully you don't have to travel as much as they do, so.
Walking wise, yes. Thank you. Mary, I had a question about the new library, supposedly. Are we using Snow and Salem Church so much that we need one in Massaponax?
Yes, according to the library information, we do. And as a matter of fact, there was the CIP, don't quote me on this, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, had 2 new libraries. Had one at Massaponax and also one out in the rural area. And there has been conversation about the need for one in the rural area still. They're, based on their traffic counts and their capacity, they do believe that it is necessary to have another one in the Massaponax area. The one that they've been talking about now at the mall would be a satellite type of storefront library that the board brought up at the most recent board meeting, and we're working with them to get the information for that in this year's budget. But
At the town center, or?
At the town center. Actually, I believe inside the actual mall area, near the food court, I believe, but I don't know
Right.
that for sure. But outside of that, they still believe they need a library in the Massaponax area based on their information. And like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, there were 2 libraries in the CIP.
Yeah, we definitely think the rural areas would need one, for sure. And how often do we replace our computers and servers?
Jane Reeve is working on some information specific to that. There is a replacement schedule. I believe it's 5 years on computers, but I'm not sure. Jane would be better to
I just got rid of a 10-year-old laptop, or desktop in my classroom.
I would say that mine at home was older than that when I replaced it too. But mine at home is not used nearly as much as this one. And this is my life. If this thing goes down, I can't operate. And my daily work is impacted by this, along with my staff. These things are key to what we do every day. And having them updated and maintained and available is something I will push for forever.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't think, based on my understanding, because we are typically calling them and telling them, I have a problem with this that needs to be fixed before they're coming to walk in and tell us it's time to fix it. I don't think there's anyone replacing anything anytime too soon. But as far as her schedule, she'll have to tell you. And like I said, they are the life support to what we do every day.
Us too anymore. My other question was the mapping program. What is there? I assume this is a specialized program. There's no way to use like Google Earth or anything for this?
GIS mapping, are you talking about?
The VITA base mapping program.
That's another question for the IT director. I'll have to ask her.
Because I know we've gone to a lot of, from using Novell to Google in order to make sure that email and things are free. I just didn't know if that was a cost-saving method we
can
could
certainly
use.
pass that question on to her. And actually, I will ask you, if you have specific questions, it is much easier to have them in writing. Yeah, because my interpretation of your question and what you actually are asking can be different. And so I want to get you the right answer, and I want to get it to you as soon as possible. So I will always suggest, if I can't answer the question here for you with certainty, then please put it in writing, and I will make sure that you get an answer to it.
And my last question, I think you can answer. I was looking at the improvements to interchange exit 118. And I was looking at the numbers, the money, it wasn't coming out to the whole amount. There was like $5.2 million missing, but I'm wondering, is that because it was in prior year budgets.
It could be, if you're looking at the total amount, it could be that part of that is in the prior year budget.
'Cause
But
there
I'd
was
have
a-
to look at that spreadsheet to see which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it was like another $6.9 million in prior year budgets.
There are also typically some information in those reports about future year, beyond the 5-year CIP plan, so it could be either one of those two pieces, Dawn,
Okay.
that's affecting that number.
And is traffic that bad there that we need to do something about that interchange?
I know you're not asking me to answer a question about traffic. As
True,
a citizen,
true.
I will not answer that. I don't, the citizens believe that traffic is an issue. I will leave it at that.
Got it.
I'm not the person to ask for those details, but
Yeah, I don't use it often, but when I go down south, I come up that way, and it's never been a problem, but I know 126 is. But I live there.
I think wherever anybody's sitting in traffic is a problem to that citizen. And I'll just leave it at that, so.
I got it. Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
So, just got one, actually a request. You mentioned earlier that the schools in the county were working on their planned IT procurements. Do you know if those are finished yet or not?
The response to the question that you had asked at the last meeting, the planned purchases?
Right.
Jeremiah had sent that information. Jane said that they would have it available, I want to say the 27th. I left my book over there, but I think that's the day she gave that it would be available.
Okay.
That sounds about right.
They're
Somewhere
working on it,
Last
yeah.
week or so.
They've got a couple projects that we're working, balancing through at the same point now, and she just said right away that it would take till the 27th before she could respond to that, so.
Okay, now, does that also include the schools' planned procurements? Or just the county, out of the county budget?
Jeremiah, how was the question worded?
It's worded to both. I know Dr. Myers here, and he was the one that forwarded it on. Is there an update as to the response time for that,
On the school
Mr.
side
Meyer?
of that question? You haven't received?
I don't recall an update.
I haven't heard anything other than how Jane responded and the way what I forwarded
Yeah,
to you.
it's probably safe to say it's probably going to be around the end of the month, one way or the other, give or take. Any other questions? All right.
And please, if there are any that I didn't answer specifically, just put them in writing and I will get those answers for you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mary. Okay. Does anybody have any departments, topics that they saw in the budget they wanted to look at, or I'm just trying to think past the firehouse and EMS, what we want to look at next, or what we want to pay attention to, and it may probably be March-ish time frame before we get to it, since December is next. Yes.
There we go. I'm sorry. But it's human services, social services. I believe there are some possible federal programs that could help individuals who are citizens of this county go back into the workforce. And I say that in the context of, I personally feel as though the county is doing a pretty good job of running efficiently. And we're looking at ways to cut and find revenue, which is a great thing. But I also think that if we can spend some time looking at ways to expand the tax base, so individuals who are receiving services, if they are now being a contributor in this county, I think that is just another way and another perspective of looking at it. And so I would like to look at social services, specifically as it relates to some very specific federal programs that I believe county agencies could engage in, and not just move individuals back, but there are federal dollars tied to that the county could then draw down for doing work that they're probably already doing, to be quite honest with you. They're probably already doing this work. It's just a matter of engaging in those programs and participating. And it's one of the things that I believe, I talked to Mary a little bit about it. She's spoken with Gail. Gail's actually doing a ROI, return on investment analysis, to see the benefit. And so I'd like to look into social services, but also allow Gail and her team and her staff to do their due diligence as it relates to looking at the programs from their perspective as well, and then maybe loop back around, follow back around with a conversation, more in-depth conversation.
That sounds pretty good to me. Then that puts it about the right time frame, probably.
Greg, are you talking about the beginning of March? Because social services is something I really wanted to look into, particularly how the current opioid epidemic is really affecting them, and the need for a new building, which I understand that's a desperate need. But won't we be doing the budgets for FY19? Won't we have the county administrators by then?
If last year is any indication, I think we had to give our report to the board by early March. So I'm thinking around that time frame is when we'd start looking for what to do after the super duper budget crunch. And this sounds like this has got some interest behind it.
Yeah, we could start that after we make our presentation to the board. I mean, I'm all for that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. And again, I'd like for Gail to actually have time to do her own analysis as well. So spring 2018, roughly, is what we're
we can look at it that time frame.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Anybody else? Anything else? All right. Thanks, Greg. All right. I think this brings us to the next bullet, everyone's most fun thing. What bullet points are we going to have for our November 28th presentation to the Board of Supervisors? I know originally we had talked about maybe doing it in December, but the only dates I was provided, the 28th was the latest, and I wanted to make sure we had a chance to meet again before we went in front of the board. I would like to get like the main bullet points worked out here tonight, and like I said, it's everyone's most fun topic. So, and I know it's Thanksgiving week, so because the 28th is a week from tomorrow, so I want to make sure it's all hammered out. They'll need to have it a couple days in advance to make sure it's on the machines and everything. So, do we want to have anything, or let me rephrase that. What do we want to have to talk about the school budget review? I know we talked about the different departments and everyone looked at them. Is there anything in particular beyond that we want to talk about?
I would certainly like to put in there to thank Dr. Meyer and Mrs. Shelley for serving as liaison and taking our questions back and answering them. I also would like, and this would be not just schools, but county. We have asked repeatedly, I know that the chairman of the Board of Supervisors has tasked Mr. Taylor's office also, but we've heard nothing about a comparison of school and county employee benefits. They're very lopsided on, both sides of the road.
So you're saying that's a discussion point for the future? I'm just trying to make sure I understand what your comment would be in general.
Well, that we have asked for it. We haven't received it. We do think information-wise, that's something they should look at because there's money to be saved, and we want to ensure that, we do right by both sets of employees.
Wasn't that part of the information sent out by Mary a week or two ago? The school and county,
No.
or are you talking about all the benefits in general versus I'm just trying to make sure I understand your question entirely.
They need to, you have the minimum age to retire from the county is 20 years. And of course, VRS handles the retirement from both sides. So don't think about the retirement paycheck. So the minimum age, 20 years to get the retirement benefits. And at 20 years, the county gets 50% of the basic health care premium covered as a benefit. Schools, it's 15 years and 55, and they get 10 years of health insurance paid as if they were an active employee, and that is $700 a month. So I think that we need to look at it, because personally, I do not think that the current retirement packages are sustainable. I mean, we want to, you know, really get back to giving our teachers step increases. Well, not just teachers, employees, so they're more than just teachers. And, you know, there's just all of this, like, you know, why are prescriptions being refunded? We're not talking co-pays. We're talking tons of money. So I think that that we need to look at, and I'm sure the school board members don't necessarily know all that. I mean, I don't want to expect the county administrator to know the personnel manual for, you know, the county employees. But any kind of savings that we could have, that we could redirect towards school employee salaries, would be just fantastic, in my opinion.
Can I speak on that?
Go ahead.
And I think some of the requests for the info, Mary, we've gotten some of it. We were given, I scanned over tonight a 41-page email dealing with school benefits. And I think probably the dilemma we're running into here is wading through all the information. And what I mean by that is, and I don't want to create more work for people, but it would almost be nice if we could have a nice packaged, like, graphic that says, you know, here's your retiree health insurance benefit county, here it is schools, like right next to each other. Because, I mean, I know enough about the county retirement, because I work for the county, that, Catherine, when I was going through it tonight, in some ways, if I'm reading the school's retiree health benefit, that the county's is actually better. Because if I'm reading right here, it says individuals hired on or after July 1st, 2009, who meet the above requirements, including 15 consecutive years of service, can participate in the school board's health insurance program after retirement. However, the employer will contribute a set dollar amount, $214, towards the total premium, with retiree responsible. Whereas if you're a county employee, at 20 years, though it's more time, the actual pickup by the county is a percentage of the premium, not a set dollar figure. Isn't it like 50% or something?
Percentage only kicks in if you're retiring with a reduced benefit. If you're retiring with a full benefit, which you could come to the county, and Rose is more in tune to this than I am, so Rose, please step up and correct me if I say something wrong. But if you come to the county with 15 years of VRS experience, and then you work another 20 years with the county, you could actually qualify for full retirement benefit with the county with 20 years of experience. And at that point, if you qualify for full retirement, you would get 100% of that health insurance. Those percentages only kick in when you're having a reduced benefit. It gets complicated. They are different. At last meeting, this is the question I heard you ask at last meeting. This is the way I interpreted. The question that I got in the email was, we want a comparison of all benefits, active and retired. That's a huge piece of information. And we just could not put a simple graph together for all that. So I had already started working on the retiree piece. That document, there is one document called County and School Retiree, which is a concise document that it lays out and explains to you, we are all on the same VRS plan. There is, county and school employees can't retire any differently other than our public safety officials. Those people that are hazardous duty can retire sooner. They can retire with a higher multiplier, and they get because they can retire sooner, they get hazardous duty pay
Supplement.
credit. A supplement that goes in from the time they retire until they reach Social Security age. That's that 1,100, whatever that,
It's 13,000.
$1,300 a month.
1,100 and something.
Yeah, that amount, those are all laid out there. So other than that, county and school employees are the same, other than our public safety hazardous duty people. Then the retiree health insurance kicks in. How we do retiree health insurance is a little bit different, but Mr. Bronner, you're correct. Our county employees stay on the current plan. Our school employees in general, and please correct me if I'm wrong, go to a Medicare supplement plan. There are two different things. They also pay a flat amount. We pay the full coverage.
Yeah, it's, I'm
Depending on
finding
what you're
it's-
looking at and how you're looking at it, you could say that the county benefit is a better benefit. That's why, and I really think that one document that is, I believe, maybe 5 or 6 pages, that has a concise layout for you, the best I could, of those two programs side by side for you to understand. There
Sure,
are
Matt.
different levels. There are some grandfathering that has occurred both on, I know on the county side, and I'm assuming on the school side too, some grandfathering that actually makes it a little more complicated. But if you look at what's happening right now for people that are hired at this point, all of that should be laid out in those documents for you.
And HRMI may be a failure on my part, but I don't know if I got the one that did that
Second
pairing.
one?
Yeah, I got
This was
the
in the first
county
one.
holidays. I got the schools benefits. I've got some other stuff, but I don't know if I ended up getting the one.
That was
on
the second email. The first email had this document.
That may
in
be
it.
a failure on my part. I may not have gotten that.
I
so
tell you, I
apologize.
really was concerned that I checked with some people on my side to make sure that it went through because it was so much data.
Mm-hmm.
One of the actual items on the first one was 140 pages long. But this particular document that I'm talking about now, 5 or 6 pages, it had exactly what you're talking about.
Then that may be why I apologize.
Laid
Mayor.
out.
Right, could you just double check with Mary afterwards, Tim, to make sure you got everything together? Because I know there's 2 emails out, and anything that goes to county sometimes bounces, even if it's below the limit. And I know that's caused issues in the past.
I've heard
with
you
getting these
all
out.
say that before, so, but I can certainly, I actually can get you a copy of it, or I can send you another email. I'll try to do it right now while we're sitting here.
Okay, you're correct as far as 2009, but those people won't start retiring until 2024. So right now, we're still paying $700 a month per employee that retires. So that other part, you're correct.
But that's because they've grandfathered other employees just as the county is doing.
But they're not paying the active for somebody from the county that retires in 15 years. I'm saying it's not sustainable. Oh, I know, it used to be 10 for the schools also. So I'm really, it's an anomaly in school divisions. I checked the comparative ones for Evergreen. It's an anomaly to have anyone get any kind of retirement health insurance help if they retire before 20 years. It's something I think their board, you agree? I think it's something their board should look at.
When did the county change, Mary?
Mm-hmm.
So the schools are only 2 years behind.
So we're talking 2024 before,
And 2022 for the county.
yes. Yes, and I think they both need to be looked at.
Either way, I think we're going to table the question about benefits. We still have questions about whether or not everyone got the documentation, and it's not trivial to get through. And we do have a presentation in a week to deal with. So I want to keep on task here. Any other comments for school budget discussion? I know we spent a lot of time. I just want to make sure we do due diligence in all cases. Some of this did go out in the last one, so I'm perfectly fine with this not being a very long topic.
I would also like you to put in there about the minimum cost of the out-of-county students.
You mean the discussion on that?
The tuition free, yes.
Okay.
I believe the taxpayer needs to know how much of the local share at a minimum is being spent for tuition-free students that are children of employees.
Hold on, I'm checking something here.
Catherine, is this separate from the question you had about those children with disabilities as well, or is this all?
Well, no, this is just the minimum. Now, we had 18 students with disabilities. We don't know how many have IEPs or how many have 504s. If you take the special ed budget and you divide it by the number of special ed kids for last year, these are the school numbers, it ends up being an average cost of about $13,000 per student. That, of course, some are going to be far higher, some are going to be far lower. So I did not even include that in the 1 point, or Jeremiah's figure of the almost 1.2 million now of county share. So it could be as much as 1.5 million of county share.
Well, if we're going to put that, we need to put how many teachers we're going to lose on top of that and how much it's going to cost to replace them.
Well, you don't know that we can't find that factual basis, and they're not all employees of
We
teachers.
can, how about this? I don't want to have any bickering or anything like that. We did have an item in here previously about the number of out-of-county students. It would stand to reason to have both the input to, or an update on the cost per student as well as the cost per recruiting teachers. I believe that's what you're intending, Dawn.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think what Dawn's saying is, which is actually, you beat me to the punch on it a little bit. There is a cost, but I think through some of the conversations that have been brought up from some of the board members that have attended and all that it's not we get rid of 190 students, we close down a school and save all that money. That's going to be 3 or 4 students from Berkeley, 3 or 4 students from Chancellor, 3 or 4 students from throughout the county, that you're not really seeing the staff savings because you're not losing those block of. So I think I hear you, and I think there should be a mention of what that is, but I do think there might be a caveat to understand that you don't just get rid of 190 students and save, what is it now, 25 students per teacher? I know one teacher's got 28 students in Berkeley right now. Right, so I mean, okay, 9 teachers, roughly, 8 teachers saved. I mean, it's, so I agree. I think there needs to be a whole picture thing. I'm not saying we don't say this is what the cost is to the taxpayer, but I think we need to put it in context of what that means in terms of, is it really a financial plus or a financial negative once everything else is taken into account?
Well, I believe we have 225 new students to Spotsylvania County this year. Is that, I think it was somewhere right around 225. And the state ended up giving us $455,000 in additional funds. So if there's no cost to the taxpayer, that money needs to be refunded. It does cost money. You cannot say it does not cost money to educate a child. It costs money. Now,
All right, I've got a note on here to include a caveat that this is not a direct cost savings back and forth. I mean, they're one of, that makes sense. I got that part. And I don't think that's any part of the argument. I think it's just a matter of making sure that people understand what those values actually are. And that's all the CBRC is for. This is what we're spending on this. This is what we're doing. This is what we think we can get out of it. Or at the very least, this is what we think it costs. And that is all if you read our bylaws, it's all in there. And I don't want to go into the question about one or another or what have you. I want to stay out of that. That is above my pay grade. And since I'm paid nothing, so, all right.
Okay, one last thing. It actually, we would lose 1.299600 in state funds to get rid of those children.
But we wouldn't have them to educate.
But we'd still have all the teachers and the buildings and all the other bills to go with.
All right, you two, that's enough. All right. At the risk of continuing a discussion. Anything else on the school budget? I will, for this presentation, I'm going to list as an open item the IT and just say we're expecting it early December-ish, late November, so that whenever we send out the presentation, we're not dinging anybody on that. It's just realizing that there is a delay in getting this stuff out there. Unless there's a issue with continuing. What do we want to talk about with county budget? I know we don't have a lot of time to do it other than to say, we at least looked at the whole thing and we're going to look at fire and EMS next.
Well, the thing I think that sort of ties in to both the school and county budget together is I just think we need to reiterate that there's going to be a big challenge that the county's really going to need to look at in terms of implementing Tier 2 of the county pay study and Tier 1 of the school pay study, because I think that's something that we need to at least bring up in our presentation, because we can talk about all that we want to talk about, but really the big cost this next year in terms of increases to the county is most likely going to be those two factors.
Mary, what is the cost for Tier 2 for the? Because I haven't seen any evergreen plan from the schools yet on what they plan to propose.
We gave the board a list of priorities for them to rank in preparation for the FY19 budget, and it included some estimates. The second year of the county's comp study is estimated to be around 400,000, and then we would have, of course, a third year of that, another 400 in the next year out. The school's numbers are still very much a work in progress. We pulled some numbers out of a document, and I cannot guarantee that they are 100% perfect, but using the information that's in the study, which they are still working through, and dividing it by 3, we're looking at about $1.5 million a year to implement a third of theirs, and so that would be that for the next 3 years. Does that sound ballparkish? We're scheduled to receive it. So that's the most up-to-date information we have, about 1.5 per year for the schools over a 3-year period, so $4.5 million there, and then about $400,000 each year for the last 2 years of the counties.
So roughly, we're looking at about $2 million just this next year between the two.
Right.
Okay, so would you like to reiterate what we had included in our August about making sure that they do double check long-term? Let's see, I'm going to read it off.
Well, I think there needs to be some acknowledgement that there needs to be some open minds as to how to deal with that's basically 2 pennies on the tax rate,
So,
$2 million.
So you just want to iterate how much it's expected to go up as far as, we've done the numbers and that's where it is. I'm trying
Well,
to...
this is a real estate reassessment year. Mm-hmm. So, and most likely, from what I'm hearing, the real estate assessments are probably going to be going up. Nobody knows, but the market seems to be going that way. So all I'm asking is that, this is just my opinion, but the Cbrc has to be behind it, that there has to be some acknowledgement that we already know there's probably about $2 million on the table that wasn't in the budget last year that's possibly going to need to be there this year, and we have reassessments coming in. So being open to the fact that perhaps real estate reassessments may not want to be totally equalized as they have in the past, or keep an open mind to that because of what we're getting ready to deal with?
Oh, what I'm trying to make sure is I understand. I hear what you're saying.
Right.
And I believe when we did the August one, I wanted to make sure that we didn't make any predetermined recommendations as to, all right, well, this property tax assessment thing's coming up. And I don't want to, I want to stay completely out of that whole policy.
I think we just need to at
debate.
least put on the table to remind the county that we as taxpayers understand that there's cost to doing services, and potentially, if we implement some of these proposed pay study recommendations, that you're looking at roughly $2 million a year in additional that you're going to need in the budget to deal with that, potentially.
So I guess my question back to you is, how is that different from the recommendation we've already given them about weighing it carefully?
I mean, I guess reiterating that, I don't know. I mean, I just don't want stuff to get lost in the shuffle, because I really think, I mean, that's a big ask. I mean, our county is very good at managing their money, but I mean, we got a potential $2 million additional cost that both the schools and the county have paid a lot of money to pay a company to go out and say, hey, we're behind market. So, or in some areas. So.
And Tim, that doesn't even include raises for both sides, because if you're going to do the Evergreen study, you need to do raises on top of that in order to keep up with it. So that's even more money on top of that.
We did have a 12
But
million.
I think it'll be fine. I mean, all we're supposed to do is make them aware. We don't need to dive 2 feet in. I think as long as we make them aware, we've done what our position entails. I mean, after we get the Evergreen results, and then we can dive into that and then begin to peel the onion back on that. That way, because we won't solve it today. I'm just saying. But we will do due diligence by making them aware of it, I think.
Jeremiah, maybe this just falls under the category of ongoing discussion items for the CBRC.
Yeah, it's an item that's come up more than once, especially since the Evergreen study has come out. But the one thing I do want, as Sean said, we want to make the aware, say these are what the numbers are, but I don't imagine that the CBRC is going to carry any more weight than Mary over there and her laptop.
Oh, we will
or
carry.
LaShawn and her laptop, because I'm sure those 2 laptops alone probably outweigh us about 2 or 3 votes.
Well, I will say too, and Dr. Meyer just pointed out to me, and I just got an email from LaShawn, I think she's actually working with someone as we speak on their review of that. Their numbers are still very much in the works. The numbers that we provided were just right out the Evergreen document. They are not set in stone. So until that final information is provided, we're really not sure where it's going to be. And funding that piece and funding the second part of the comp study ranked in the high to mid priorities for the board. The board ranked these items for us, and they showed up there. So it certainly is on their radar.
Okay, so I think doing something for November 28th would probably be very premature for us, especially if they're not going to get it for another weekish. And it sounds like they're working it hot and heavy, and I do not want to speak before LaShawn or Mary.
May I be recognized, please?
No, you may.
Well, thank you. Tim, were you not aware that we have a $12 million carryover in the county for this year? Yes. Now, I know that part of that was, part of that was planned in the FY18 budget, and you don't expect that much carryover. But there was a $12 million
Carryover. Let me clarify that. There's a $12 million undesignated fund balance at this point.
Okay.
The carryover was not all that made that up. We already had some fund balance that existed before the carryover. However, we did do better as far as not spending all the expenditures that we anticipated, and we did have some revenues that exceeded our projections. Some of those, because as I reported earlier, because we look at those throughout the year, mid-year, third quarter, some of those had already been worked into the FY19 budget. Or FY18 budget. We already anticipated them when we did the 18 budget. We knew they were happening. There were some beyond that, to the tune, I think, a couple $1 million that we will factor into the FY19 budget. But it is very much a work in progress. It is, as we talked about the estimates early, we do the best we can with what we have, and as we find those things that change, we work them in. So that the same thing will happen this year. When we begin to look at the mid-year for FY18, if we see anything happening, we will adjust the 19 budget to reflect that. It is always changing. And so, yes, while there is a $12 million undesignated fund balance, that is not going to happen again next year, and that is one-time money that is available now to be used for one-time expenditures. You would not use it for anything that was recurring or ongoing, of which salaries fall into the recurring category.
The other thing I would like to put in there under that evergreen is, and I guess Rose could probably answer this better. Some of the, I don't know if you would call them stipends, or because of the employees moving up, let's just take, for example, advanced life support for firefighters. And I don't know if it was called a stipend before. I don't know what the term is that what we call them. But that sort of went away. And I just want to be sure that any of these things that we were doing additionally, these pay supplements on both sides, county and schools, that they remain. So can you speak to that?
Sure. I mean, what we actually decided, and Jay Cullinan, our chief, is here too, and he certainly is open to weigh in on this, but what we looked at is actually making it so that it's more built into the structure. So you have a position that requires certain certifications, and with that position, there's a grade and a salary range that's associated with that. So rather than kind of working in tandem with the classification scale or working kind of apart from it, we actually built it into the structure.
Okay, so it did not go away.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
I mean, it's still there and present. It's just that we've actually utilized the methodology we already have established instead of having something that's sort of a bolt-on, if you will, to the classification scale. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mary, question about the $12 million. The newspaper has had a lot in it lately about the $4 million to be spent on a potential pool with St. Michael's. Does that mean they could not use that money for that because it would incur recurring costs every year? We
would not suggest that they use, budget that for any recurring costs, but to purchase an item or to buy a capital facility, we would definitely suggest that that would be appropriate use for that. In the past, you've seen us actually suggest to the board that they take some of these excesses that have occurred and actually use it to construct something or buy a purchase instead of borrowing money for it. So the purchase of the actual building would be an appropriate use. No, we would not suggest they budget the recurring costs associated with it from that. We would suggest they would have to look at those recurring costs and factor that into the ongoing budget for the next year.
So where would they come up with that money?
They have options. I mean, they could use the money, the one-time money for that purchase. They could actually use any excesses that we have in the FY19 budget. What we will be doing now is looking at that priority list that the board gave us. We will be looking at our revenue projections. We will see how much revenue we have, and we'll work down that priority list to see what is available to fund the priorities that they have told us that they believe are their top priorities. All 7 board members either provided a list, part of that list, or responded that night. So they've all are factored into that request, and that is just the way the process will work, and they'll work through it through the multitude of budget requests or budget work sessions until they work that out. So that pool of money we talked about earlier, that undesignated money, is their choice how they allocate that money out, and that would be that ongoing money would be an appropriate use for ongoing costs such as maintenance, staff, whatever it takes to operate a facility like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Okay. I think we've got enough to get through most of that. You guys have seen the few recommendations I had already kind of tossed out there. Does anybody have any others? Okay. And that's pretty much everything I was planning on including in there. I expect there may be one or two questions, even though we haven't received any, based off of our August report. We asked the county specifically, and we have not heard anything back, so I don't think there are any standing questions, except for maybe a clarification that may come as we have our discussion. Let me get back to my agenda here.
Could we put on there the pool, the $4 million for that, for St. Michael's, since that would be a recurring cost, and from what I understand, a very high recurring cost every year? That at this time, with all these bills we have coming up, that we would not suggest they buy it?
Well, that's business that's currently in front of the board and the county, and with some semblance of both. I'm trying to think of the words to use. And I had a late night last night, so and my coffee is wearing off, so this is not a good combination. Maybe I need to get a Keurig back here. But it's it's currently something that's out there being discussed fairly openly, and it's not part of the budget. I think the CBRC might be a little premature to talk about it in a public setting, especially if it would probably wager that it's going to be on the agenda before we get there. And if it's something that the county is currently working through, whether or not it works in their budget, I kind of trust Mary at this point to say whether or not it's going to negatively affect. And as I said before, I'm pretty sure Mary's words are a little bit more than mine. I mean, we can point things out, but that's pretty much how it is. Since it's not set in stone or not really proposed to my knowledge, I think it would be a premature item for us. Okay. I think this covers the presentation points. Any new business? Or I'm coming to the end of the agenda, so. Nope.
I just wanted to tell you that I did meet with the chief, and I had a tour of two of the firehouses. It was very, very informative. Everyone was very welcoming. I happened to see a piece of equipment at Company 5 that was 16 years old. So yes, they go a long, long time. And I think that, you know, it's going to be, we have maybe 4 or 5 pages of budget versus hundreds that we had for the schools. So that's it.
All right, well, if there's no other new business, I think this takes us to a motion to close. Do I have a motion to close the meeting? Adjourn.
Sure.
Sorry.
I move to close the meeting.
All right. Anybody got coffee? I'm in desperate need. All right, second?
Second.
Anybody oppose? All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all, everyone who came.